Issue 98. Wait, why are they saying that Sonic reprogrammed Silver Sonic too? Nate did it, not him. How could Sonic reprogram anything? Anyways, we start with Eggman under attack by him, being chased all the way to a remote prison island where he ended up falling through a hole to his death. Nah, just kidding, of course he's fine. Although at least it's justified because he's an android, so he can survive more. By the way, who runs Prison Island in this universe? I mean, it wouldn't make sense for it to be the Hidden City people, because they want to stay hidden. And you'd think other people, other societies would discover the island, and thus it wouldn't be a hidden city anymore. Silver Sonic unfortunately assumes Eggman is dead though, and leaves instead of thinking to go fly down there and check. The narration explains that Eggman had stumbled upon a lab that was sealed shut by the Station Square military many years before, a high-tech jail cell that once housed Robotnik's grandfather on his mother's side. First off, why would a jail cell be gifted with a lab? Wait, was it once a lab and then it was robbed of all its stuff and turned into a jail cell? That would make more sense. But how could Eggman, or rather Robotnik, be related to anyone of the Hidden City unless Gerald was an overlander instead of a Hidden City human? But then why would the Station Square military have known about him and wanted to interfere with his work? So that can't be it. Also, if this is really Eggman's big entrance in Siren Gate, that's pretty pathetic on his part. In the game, he stormed that place in a walking mech, but here he literally just fell into a hole. So we discovered this information about Gerald in a data entry log which had once belonged to Gerald himself, a secret journal containing the destructive designs of a distorted genius. Wait, is it a data entry log or a journal? It's clearly a book that Eggman's all happy about, so it can't be a data entry log. As I reflect on how tired I've become of the constant narration making me feel disengaged from what's going on, although it is more realistic than having Eggman talk out loud, describing everything to us as the Captain Obvious. The narration says that Eggman had found a way to fight Sonic and take over Station Square, but it would take some time. Then we see text saying 1 week ago, and in the heart of Station Square's financial district, we see Shadow stealing a Chaos Emerald. Wait, shouldn't they have put 1 week ago at the start of the issue? Otherwise this text is implying that Shadow being free and stealing the emerald happened before Eggman found out about him. We also completely skip Shadow's badass introduction to Eggman, but I don't think a series of silent still images could do it justice. Better to just cut out the filler, I guess. Silver Sonic had tried to prevent Shadow from completing the theft, but ultimately failed. Does it get repaired? The case was then assigned to a human detective who knew that because it was an emerald that was stolen, he didn't have very long to solve this mystery. Apparently, one Chaos Emerald has enough power to power Station Square's artificial atmosphere for the next 50 years, even though they rely on 6 Super Emeralds to do that stuff. Okay, this time the President mistaking Shadow for Sonic makes more sense because he saw Shadow on colorless monochrome footage, but that doesn't change the fact that we can clearly see chest fur, so even if you can't see Shadow's stripes, the chest fur should make it obvious it's not Sonic. Did he assume Sonic grew the chest fur really fast through a serum or something as a disguise? Why is the footage colorless to begin with? What, are they still in a silent era? Besides, even if it was Sonic, why wouldn't he just assume he had a very good reason for getting the emerald? He's a hero. Either way, he hires Rouge, a treasure hunter, to retrieve the gem. Then we see text saying 24 hours ago, and some narration, we still haven't gotten actual dialogue yet, says that Commander Hugo Brass's crew had finally managed a rough fix on the Hedgehog's location. Shadow's or Sonic's? If the latter, it should be obvious he's in Knothole. And come to think of it, wait, never mind, Sonic's not trusted to actually stay in Knothole regardless of not being allowed to leave it, so that's not really an alibi. Hey, they actually had Brass's team be called Sigma Alpha 2, which is what the team that kidnapped Sonic in the helicopter at the start of SC2 was called. That's a nice touch. We finally see Sonic, who after being threatened by the squadron who call him an it, runs around fast and then says the nice line, "Wouldn't it be better to ask what happens to our guns instead?" Sadly, Sonic's wasting time toying with them causes him to be captured by a net, when it could have easily just run away in that time. Although then the squadron would have gone to Jeffrey and that would have been even worse. Then Sonic, in the helicopter, sees a loose screw, and that's at the very least an attempt at an explanation for how Sonic got out. But the problem is that you'd think his wrists and maybe even ankles would have handcuffs on them, so how would he be able to do anything with that loose screw? Not to mention that well, one, he doesn't have a screwdriver, and two, when we see the text saying that the Hedgehog's taking out everyone aboard, the comic commits the same crime as the game by lazily not showing us what's actually been happening inside the helicopter, robbing us of an action scene for absolutely no reason. This is what being too faithful to the games gets you. Oh, and Sonic thinks the low-budget flights remark instead of saying it out loud like he's supposed to, which isn't charming. Nor is the line, "I like running better," being rephrased much more awkwardly. With that, Sonic gets through City Escape in a bunch of narrow panels that barely show us anything, and gets chased by the gun truck as the story ends, and I misread, "Don't miss the exciting concussion to this adventure." However, that concussion is in SA2, the video game. So is the video game story canon to the comic, or are they actually going to complete this adaptation and explain how Sonic got back home and cleared his name in their own way? I read on the timeline that it's going to be explained in Sonic Universe, but that happens way later. So is that going to be an issue that takes place way earlier in the chronology? The first story was crap, but the next one is actually original, kind of. And you can tell right away that it's better because it has dialogue. Gerald Robotnik's looking mighty thin here. Gerald explains talking out loud instead of thinking for the audience's sake that he was a young man when he left the Overlanders for doing research in the Hidden City, which he was lucky to actually find. Gerald remarks about it for some reason being ironic that of all the creatures on Mobius, it was one particular species of biology that was the universal constant, whatever that means. It's a shame that's not explained right away. Maria, who has brown hair for some reason, was startled by the power surge of Shadow being awakened and tells him that a Station Square military carrier is showing up, literally right after Shadow was awakened. Gerald says that he can't allow those simple-minded idiots to lay their hands on Shadow because he's too unstable in his current condition. I was surprised that he said that, calling them idiots. It gives him a little more depth rather than just having him be purely a nice old man. I actually giggled a little at how after we see the word Badoom near a spaceship, they actually put text at the bottom of the panel saying, "Since there is no air in space and therefore no sound, we took a bit of artistic license just like we do in the movies." I wasn't expecting that at all. The military shows up suspicious because Gerald doesn't want to turn his cure for all diseases into the military, making them think he'll use Shadow against them. Although I like that at least one soldier questions what they have to be afraid of in the Ark, since there's nothing but an old man and a crippled granddaughter. Wait, Marie isn't crippled, just sick. And I guess those two really are the only ones in the Ark. By the way, I have a hard time believing Shadow could have a cure to all diseases and stuff in his blood, unless it would be really infused with magic. And at that point, I'll then have to question why any disease would be a continued threat after Shadow became a hero later in the comic. He could just donate blood constantly and the problem of disease would be solved. I mean, I guess he only has so much blood, so there's that. It would be a very limited supply and probably be very expensive. The comic is more gutsy than the game by actually showing Maria getting shot. And it's with a red laser blast instead of a realistic gun, which is much better aesthetically for Sonic. Wish the game did that. And to add insult to injury, someone remarks, "Stupid girl," after she's given the final blow. I can understand why they think that from their perspective, since she, from their perspective, let an evil living weapon of destruction get away, but still, that was cold. Gerald gets imprisoned, and in another bit of originality, they say that if he could build one Shadow, he could build another, back in the lab waiting for him in their prison island. So Prison Island really does belong to the Station Square military, and it explains why there was a lab for a prisoner. After Gerald finds out what happened to Maria because someone idiotically told him about it, when they could have easily just played the "you're a prisoner, you don't have the right to know" card, Gerald naturally wants justice. He not only reprograms the Ark to destroy the world with a laser, as a natural reversal of the whole he was trying to help the entire world with the cure for all diseases thing, but should anything happen to him, his biomatter downloaded into Shadow will ensure that Shadow will become his agent of revenge. I'm glad they explained this. But
how does he put in Shadow when he doesn't have Shadow with him and never will again?
What does he mean by biomatter? It'd make more sense if he said a brainwashing nanopot. Then Gerald thinks that if the military uncovers his plans, a microchip will contain a complete record of everything for anyone who might follow in his footsteps.
why would he assume that anyone would want to follow in his footsteps? His goal is to destroy the world, and that's a goal he has as a personal goal for what happened to Maria, someone he knows. Why would he ever assume that someone would want to follow in his footsteps? It's just forcing him to arbitrarily give a microchip that would help Eggman for no reason.
That's explained why nobody figured out what Gerald was doing despite him doing stuff right in front of them. His designs are way beyond anyone's current research, so no one can understand them. It's because of this that Gerald is told that because of the dangers his project imposes, it will be discontinued and he'll be executed immediately. So the only plot hole left is how Gerald's Eclipse Cannon death alteration that he made in his jail cell got all the way up to the Ark with no one to take it there. Unless Eggman brought it there. Then it's ordered that they'll seal up Prison Island and abandon it. The first story was written by Carl Bullers, and much to my disappointment, rather than it being too original as the supposed problem, it was actually too faithful. It was nothing but narration giving us a prologue to the plot of SE2. There were a few original things at least. Eggman falls into a hole in Prison Island like a dope being chased by Silver Sonic and mistaken for dead rather than storming it in a badass mech. And Sonic toys with the squadron getting rid of their guns being all playful Sonic-like until he gets captured by a net. And then Sonic sees a loose screw in the helicopter and somehow that's the explanation for how he escaped, even though he still logically should have been handcuffed and unable to do it. And we don't get to see what the hell he did in that helicopter. That really angers me, you know, they had no excuse not to show us that. But instead, they had to be faithful to the game, and so they left a giant plot hole. Really, the story was just boring because it had practically no dialogue, a recipe for disaster. The second story, by Ken Penders, is ironically the better one because it actually has dialogue. It's sad that it's such a basic thing for any story ever, and that's a huge compliment. Even if the dialogue is just telling us the same backstory about Joe Robotnik that was in SE2, only better because it actually tries to fill in most of the plot holes. We know how he reprogrammed the Ark to destroy the world with the Eclipse Cannon, reprogrammed Shadow to be an agent of destruction, and made sure that someone would carry out his revenge if anything would happen to him. We just don't know how his reprogrammed Ark was sent back to space when his project had been discontinued out of suspicion for him. Not to mention how he reprogrammed the Ark when it should have been in outer space. By the way, why didn't Eggman or Robotnik take over the Ark upon finding it in space completely unoccupied? It's not like it was invisible the whole time, was it? How did they not find it? But yeah, this is an excellent comic adaptation of Gerald's backstory. It actually makes more sense than in the game by giving us extra details to clear things up. It's a shame it's not considered canon to the game though.